The Nikkor Z 180 to 600mm f5.6 to 6.3 VR is a full-frame super telephoto variable aperture zoom lens released in August of 2023 for a launch price of just under $1,700 USD. It's an all-internal zooming lens constructed with 9 rounded aperture blades that range from f5.6 to 6.3 wide open to f32, f36 stopped all the way down, and while not an S-line lens, so no super fancy coatings, the front element is fluorine coated and has a total of 25 elements in 17 groups, including 6 ED and 1 S spherical element. It has a minimum focus distance of 1.3 meters or 4.27 feet at 180 millimeters and 2.4 meters or 7.88 feet at 600 millimeters. It weighs roughly 2,140 grams or 4 pounds, 11.5 ounces, and is 110 by 315.5 millimeters or 4.4 by 12.5 inches dimensionally. So what do we think of this lens? Well, it's gigantic. It's huge, but I love that it does not externally zoom because it doesn't make it any bigger than it already is. It has an extremely short throw. It's basically a half turn of the fingers from 180 to 600. You don't have to reset at all, and that's pretty darn cool. This rubber up here is for nothing except grip, probably because you'll want to grab it by this to put your camera on it, just to make you feel a little safer because it is quite hefty. It has a real deep recessed rear lens element, and the front element is absolutely gigantic, and you can literally see the inner workings of it because it is so huge. We won't do it on camera, but on the Z6 III, it feels pretty silly. It feels pretty silly on the Z8, and it still feels a little silly on the Nikon Z9, although it feels the least silly on the biggest camera that Nikon offers, of course. You have 4 lens function buttons around here. You can program that to do whatever you want. And on the side, we have a auto and manual switch, which are nice and clicky. And then we have a limiter switch from full or 6 meters. And that's nice and clicky as well. The outside is basically 100% plastic. There's absolutely no metal anywhere. The only metal I can see, literally, is the inserts on the tripod mount for, the 1/4-28 there. That's it. There's like no metal at all. The lens mount, however, is metal, so that's good. So it doesn't look, and it's not technically super well made, but it feels pretty heavy. It kind of feels weight-wise that it's really well made, but based on the materials, we don't even have metal on the rear part of this. This is probably not going to survive a fall at all. Not really too much else to say about this. I think it's probably time that we jump into the field and do some test shots.
All right, so we're out here with the Nikkor Z 180 to 600 f5.6 to 6.3. I've already got a little booby sweat going on. It is really humid out today, and I've actually got 2 lenses to test out today, but you'll have to subscribe to the channel if you want to see that one. It's coming up in the future. Got my note cards here. The first thing we gotta check is focus speed. Let me kick on my Atomos here. Ugh, it's kind of a big one. So I'll say in the extremes, when you go from totally out of focus to, something in focus, it's about what you would expect. But when you're not shooting in that kind of extreme, it is pretty damn quick. Basically instantaneous. I want to say, let's try it from about halfway out of focus. I mean, for all practical purposes, it's like instantaneous. So that's pretty good for the price that you pay for this dang thing. Focus noise. So I can hear just a tiny bit of a but it's not like disturbing. It's not like distracting or anything like that. It's just not totally silent. Most lenses aren't totally silent. Just saying that. There's just like a few that are actually just silent. We gotta do a little focus distance action. So we're focusing on this post, kind of like right here. Let me show you. About right there. And we're gonna do this first at 180. Let's see how we do. I'm kind of focusing on that little plate there, little rusty plate. About right around here is minimum focus. And if I go to 600, we're somewhere around here. I actually fell out of frame with that one. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's about like that. I do, however, want to show you through the Atomos what that looks like at minimum focus, because it is extremely close when you are at 600, right? So it's like right up on that thing. Let me back up just a little. It's actually really hard to hold. Let me boost up my shutter here. And I just brought the camera all the way back over here to the table before I did black and white ability shots, but that's what's next. So I'm just gonna pop over there and do black and white ability shots real quick. Actually, I can pretty comfortably do that from here. The VR is really coming in clutch, which I totally forgot that this thing had VR. But man, it is coming in handy because hand holding 600 millimeters is tough. In fact, why don't we test the VR a little bit? I'm gonna pull down my ISO and do this at like 1/200. And we'll just have to see what those look like in Lightroom. All right, now I need to do some saturation shots. And so we have been doing that on this red lantern. I've got a little yellow golf divot puller and not a lot of kind of mid-range saturated blue around. I see a little something. Let's go ahead and do the red first. So even at 180, the bokeh looks really nice at 5.6, as it kind of should, because that's, you know, bokeh isn't a problem when you're like that. I had to come over here to get better light on the red. The reds look extremely good through my viewfinder. Now my viewfinder is in, let me make sure, picture control. It's just in standard. Let me put it in neutral. Yeah. The reds look really saturated. They look really, really good. And for the yellow, we've got this little divot puller. And so we'll just take a quick shot of that. Let me set that up all nice. The yellows look pretty good. I got a little blue over here. This thing, it's not an overly saturated blue, and so that's good. I have no blue skies today. Normally I take a quick shot of the sky. It's all gray today because it was raining earlier, which is why it's humid, which is why I'm sweating and looking terrible. Yep. I got good shoes on, good jeans, nice shirt, getting ruined. I think the blues look pretty accurate, actually, which is good for me. It may not be for you. Some people like Nikon blues because they're Nikon blue. I think they can be a little JPEG-y. And so you guys know by now, if you've watched the channel for a while, not huge on super blues. I usually pull back Nikon blues a little bit. And for green, shoot one across the yard. Greens look fairly normal too. I feel like the reds are definitely fantastic on this, which leads me to think I don't have anybody to shoot, but this may be good for some like distant portraits, like creepy portraits, portraits that maybe you shouldn't be shooting. I think the skin tones would probably be really excellent with this lens. I see some kind of orange way off in the distance. We're gonna shoot it. It's not the neighbor, because like the neighbor is family, but their neighbor on the other side have their lawnmower out, and so I'm gonna shoot that over there. I haven't shot with anything at 600 in a very, very long time because it's not really like what I do. And so for me, this is like a lot of fun because I'm shooting things that like, I'm looking for things that like I normally don't even look for. I see a rake over there. Try to get some green that's more kind of well lit. There's some leaves over there. Yeah, personally, I think the greens are pretty normal. Maybe a little bit less than normal. It looks like the blues are what I like. Normally, I kind of have to mess with greens because I'm a big green hater, but I may actually add a little bit to this. I think the score of the saturation of this lens, if I could rub my crystal lens, I think is going to come out to be kind of in the middle, because where the reds are really excellent, like overly excellent, and the yellows are real good, the blues, not being biased, I like the blues. The blues aren't super saturated, the greens aren't super saturated. So it'll probably leave it right in the middle of color saturation. Now we need to hop into Lightroom and check out these test shots.
All right, so we got our test images loaded into Lightroom. This is the one at like minimum focus distance. And I'd say right off the bat, good detail, but it's on the softer side. This is at minimum focus, so let's look at another one here. Yeah, it's not Nikon's sharpest, but it's also not Nikon's most expensive. I'm happy with this for what this lens does, 180 to 600, and being, you know, at the $2,000 mark, and a variable aperture range that's 5.6 to 6.3. That's not offensive at all, and so I think it's perfectly fine for what it is. Let's check the black and white ability real quick. Let's just hit B and W. It's just kind of okay. Yeah, it's just kind of okay. It's not super great black and white ability, but it's all right. Now, if we throw Gravedigger on it, of course it looks awesome. Black and white ability is a thing, but you can edit things to be awesome in black and white. Awesome separation, though. Destroyed background. But then again, of course it is at 600 millimeters. Let's check out the saturation. Yeah, the red saturation is absolutely awesome. And there's a good amount of contrast on this lens. Real good amount of contrast. And we can upgrade this to sharp. Not overly sharp, maybe middle of the road in my scoring system. You can see my scoring system for every lens that I've used in the Nikon Z lineup at zwadephoto.com/theopticexplorer. Let's check the yellow saturation. Yellow saturation looks good. Yellow and red, doing really good here. Blue is pretty rich. This is a rather dull blue. It's pretty rich. Yeah, I'd say that the saturation so far is really good. And greens are pretty natural. This is good. I don't feel like I would have to pull this back. Normally, I get kind of offended by the greens that cameras produce, and so I usually end up having to pull them back. But if I pull this back, like I normally would do, it looks a little dull. So I would give this high grades on saturation. I think the color saturation is fantastic based on these tests. The orange looks good. Let's look at the sharpness at a distance. Looks good. See lots of detail. Good contrast. This rake looks good. The red looks good. Great red saturation on this lens. And we took this shot here to observe the bokeh, and the bokeh looks really nice. This is really good bokeh. Really, really good. Let's get in here. This lens is pretty awesome for 2,000 bucks. I don't really, for the amount of super telephoto that I do, this would get me by probably forever until the day that I decide I might get super serious about, you know, wildlife or sports or something like that. Yeah, this looks really great at 2,000 bucks.
Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go do a little walk around and take some real pictures.
All right, so for the walk around, I really only wanted to accomplish a couple of things in the worst case scenario. And we did have worst case scenario. There's absolutely no wildlife hardly going on. I did manage to find one bird, and it flew away at one point, and I managed to get some idea of how this lens tracks on the Z8 at least, and we'll get to that in a second. But what I'll say first is that at least in camera, it seems to keep up perfectly well with moving subjects, and I kind of expected that because it's pretty dang quick autofocusing. And the second thing I wanted to see was just a real observation of sharpness and contrast that I don't really shoot test shots for anymore because, you know, it's just boring. It's boring to shoot sharpness test shots. It's better to go into the field and do exactly like this, and it's sharp. Every single hair looks good. Because of the good contrast that we have on this, we got lots of different differentiation between like the tones, and that helps make it look even sharper. looks good. Same kind of scenario with the 100 to 400, an awesome amount of contrast. This lens does not have as much as the 100 to 400, but this still looks really, really great. This is using animal eye tracking, and it's right on. I mean, right on. This kind of looks like I have a grid on a light. I don't. This is the reflection from the chairs. This cat, by the way, is an absolute jerk. It totally hates me, and it hisses at me every time it looks at me. Like right after this, right whenever I walked away. Now I'm at 600 millimeters, and so I was pretty far away. But you can see the progression. He's laying down, he picks his head up, and then by the time we get about like right here, he's at like full alert and just waiting for me to do something wrong. And then as soon as I walked away, he hissed at me. Man, this lens is good at 2,000 bucks. This lens definitely doesn't, in my opinion right now, does not have any business being $2,000. I think it's definitely worth more than that. Look at it, you could just tell how irritated he looks from here. You see he's sleepy? Well, he looks pretty ticked off right there too. But in this last one, he's evil. This one's pretty good. We'll test out some presets on this one. Gravedigger looks absolutely awesome. If you want these presets, by the way, you can go to zwadephoto.com/digital products. Black Tar Heroic looks pretty cool. Vampire looks pretty haunting. Vampire actually matches this cat's personality. Honestly, I'll go with Moody Brown, and I'll just pull the blues a little. Boost that up a little bit. A little contrast. Cool. We just kind of shot a random bird with eye tracking. It did perfectly fine. It found right there. And this is nice and sharp. It looks good. In focus, looks good. This lens has zero business being 2,000 bucks. Sharp. Detailed. I heard some people say that at 600 millimeter, maybe it was looking a little soft. I feel like it's pretty consistent throughout the range at 180 and at 600. It looks good. What do you want for 2,000 bucks? This is a wicked, wicked value. So I was shooting these things here, whatever these are, these pigeons. These things right here were distracting the Z8 for a while, but some of these definitely hit. Looks like, I mean, good detail in the feathers. Lots of separation between each feather. Good detail, good contrast. I kind of walked my way up closer, but on the way, I did find this grasshopper here. I'm a little bit too close to get good focus, I think. Lots of detail, not incredibly sharp when you're this close at this is 560 millimeters. So whenever you get kind of close to subjects, I mean, obviously you start to lose sharpness. I would have to shoot this lens for a little bit to figure out where that room of play is, where I can get good sharpness at what distance. Nonetheless, back alley blue looks pretty cool. Totally unrealistic, but pretty awesome. Pinky in the frame is okay, but I think pop, lock, and shop it is probably where I'd be on that. Just pull the highlights a little. Cool. Okay, now I managed to get close enough that the pigeon flew away. Oh, my shutter speed is way too low. It did lock on, but there is motion blur because my shutter speed was way too low whenever I was shooting this thing, which wasn't moving. Missed opportunity. You can see it is on. Just too much motion blur for it to be any good or even keepable, in my opinion. He was squawking a storm, too, whenever he was flying away. I ticked him off real bad. But this one kind of missed a little. That's a rookie mistake. I don't shoot wildlife, ever. And so I totally forgot to increase my shutter speed. So that's a missed opportunity. But it looks like we got a couple misses now. The hit rate is really good. I mean, it's keeping up. This one's pretty good. Well, I answered my question. Will it keep up with moving subjects? Yes. Missed there. Missed there. Missed there. Found it again. I'm pretty sure this is my biology teacher. He'll probably never see this channel, probably has no idea that I have a YouTube channel, but I'm pretty sure this is Mr. Hand's truck. He goes kayak fishing. He was a cool teacher, man. He used to do this gorilla impression. It was pretty hilarious. Couple misses. Yeah, the hit rate is so good that I wouldn't even bother going through all of these and actually counting them. It's totally fine. God, this lens is like way too good for 2,000. I mean, it does everything you need. Everything you need. Yeah, I should have boosted my ISO. Like I'm at 100 ISO and 250th of a second. That's ridiculous, Zach. Amateur hour over here. Yeah, he grabbed onto this little tiny twig. That one's right on. Let's try kids on all right again. Awesome. Well, I know everything I need to know about this lens. It's an absolute winner at an absolute winning price. So what can be said about the Nikkor Z 180 to 600 millimeter? Well, I really think that this is an incredibly good value. I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of this lens, despite what people were saying. Everyone has loved this lens and everyone is singing its praises. But at $2,000 with this kind of range, I didn't expect it to be that sharp. I expected it to be kind of flat rendering. I didn't expect it to be fast autofocusing. I expected all of those things I just mentioned to just be okay. But I find them to be better than okay. In fact, I confidently will say again that this lens really doesn't have any business being the price that it is. I think you could easily charge $2,500 for this. It does too much and it does those things well. That range, the contrast is excellent. The sharpness is better than what you might expect. And God, it's just, I mean, Nikon hit it out of the park with this one. This is almost like a thank you to their customers. It's like, we're going to give you a really, really awesome lens for right at $2,000 and have a good time. Absolute win. I'm Z Wade, the Z Wade, and Z Wade Photo. Stay sharp, YouTube.